Okay, and it's 11 o'clock Eastern time, so we're going to go ahead and start today. Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Stevens, and I'm the Manager of International Recruitment, Marketing, and Admission at Suny New Paltz. So welcome to today's virtual event. And the purpose of this event is to address different questions and concerns that our current students, such as all of you, have regarding the fall 2020 semester. Please note that this session is being recorded. For those of you who submitted questions in advance, thank you. The panelists will answer these questions first. If you have additional questions, please write them in the Q&A section rather than the chat. And we will have time at the end to answer some of those as well. Our panelists joining us today are many who you probably are familiar with already. We have Cindy Cullen, Coordinator of International Student Services, Jennie Castro, International Student Advisor, Kathleen Geher, Director of International Dual Diploma Programs, and Executive Director of the Center for International Programs, Beth Vargas, who will say a few words before we get started with questions.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you all for joining our conversation today. I want to start by acknowledging the good work of my colleagues in preparing for this event. As you probably know, guidance from the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, and the Student Exchange Visitor Program, or Stvp, has changed significantly in the past 10 days. On Monday, July 6th, Stvp issued guidance that limited the educational opportunities of international students, both those in the US and those who are abroad, by placing significant restrictions on online study. While trying first to understand these new restrictions and provide the best advice to you, the International Student Advisors joined with colleagues across the Suny system and other universities in the state of New York to oppose it. On Monday, July 13, the Attorney General of the state of New York filed a lawsuit declaring that the Stvp directive was arbitrary, capricious, an abuse of discretion, and not in accordance with the law. 20 other states and several universities filed similar suits. But before any of these lawsuits could be decided in court, the federal administration rescinded the directive and has begun to provide new guidance that's more reflective of the current situation in the United States and the impact of COVID-19 on international students. As a result, our responses to your questions today are quite happily different from what they would have been even a few days ago. But the policies are continuing to change, and we continue to monitor the regulations from ICE and Stvp. We will communicate this to all international students, both those in the US and those who are abroad. So please continue to look for updates from international programs. We'll send them to you by email, and we'll put the information on our website. What has not changed and what will not change is the support of the university for you, our international students. We are committed to your success. I hope that you had a chance to read the letter of support that President Christian and Interim Provost Lyman joined me in writing last Friday. Our support for you continues. Our advocacy continues. You'll find a link to this letter in the chat. Again, thank you for joining us today, and let's begin with the questions.
Great, thank you, Beth. We have questions divided up in different topics. The first topic is fall class-related questions. And this first question is for Beth. Will fall 2020 classes be offered face-to-face or online?
Yeah, so the simple answer is both. I hope that you also have had a chance to read the new Paltz forward documents that are also on the university website. There's a lot of information there, and more information is being added every day. It does continue to be a fluid situation, but we're offering a hybrid model of instruction. So that means that many classes are online and many have an in-person or a synchronous element. So you will need to review your individual schedule of classes and confirm your own plans for your with your academic department or your faculty advisor. We can provide a link to you for the fall 2020 academic calendar and also the fall final exam schedule. That will show if it's online or synchronous courses. The information is posted online, and we expect that there will be updates posted soon, possibly today, but there could be more changes between now and the start of the fall semester. If you look at the link right now, it says check your class schedule before the start of classes to maintain social distance and reduce classroom density. Many classes will be moving to online instructions. So we continue to communicate with deans, department chairs, academic advisors to make sure that everyone has the most current individual or information, and that each individual international student will have the best possible academic schedule for the fall semester.
Great, thank you. This next question is for Cindy. How would taking online classes affect our F1 status if we are studying from within the United States this fall?
Well, current SEVP guidance allows for a full online course load for continuing and current students within the US.
Great. And next question also for Cindy. Can I take SUNY New Paltz online classes from my home country? And will this affect my visa?
Again, the same current SEVP guidance also allows for a full online course load for continuing and current students outside of the US. So both a full online course load, whether you're in the US or studying from abroad as a current or continuing student, is allowable.
Great. For Jennie, can I start my online classes, my classes online from my home country and then return to the US mid-semester to complete them in person?
So first of all, good morning, everyone, or hello. And the answer would be, it depends. It depends on the mode or the format in which your class is being offered. If it's a requirement for you to come back, then that would be something that you need to consider in terms of preparation and finalizing your course schedule. But also we recommend that you take into consideration travel restrictions, the possibilities of quarantine at the time of travel. So for further questions, definitely contact the International Student Programs Office.
Great. Kathy, how effective are online classes compared to face-to-face classes?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is a difficult question to answer because there's so many different ways that online classes can be delivered. In theory, they cover the same content and material that you would be exposed to in an in-person seated course, but depending on your own learning style and how the professor decides to do the course in a given semester could change how effective the class is for you. Generally, online classes do require good time management skills and being able to work independently, reading the syllabus, knowing the deadlines, and most importantly, reaching out for support if you're having any difficulties in the online format, either technical difficulties, language difficulties, academic difficulties, getting help early on from faculty or other campus resources is really beneficial. But we hope, as a faculty member myself, I hope that students are coming out of my class with a good learning experience in whatever format they take it in.
Will international students be guaranteed the face-to-face classes they need to maintain their F1 status? Beth?
Yeah. So with the new guidance from SEVP, students with F1 status do not need to register for face-to-face courses in order to maintain legal status. If you want to take a fully online semester in the fall, that's fine. If you want to take seated classes, that will be indicated in the schedule of courses. So you'll know which are seated, which are hybrid, and which are online. Again, you'll need to work with your academic advisors to put together the best schedule for your individual concerns. But we'd also like to ask you to let us know what your plans are, whether you're going to be outside the country, whether you're going to be in the US, but or possibly out of the state. I know some students have indicated plans to live with relatives or friends in other parts of the country and take online classes. Please let us know. We've sent you a survey. You can update that as your plans change, but it's very important that we know where you are and how best to support you.
For Cindy, what happens to international students if the campus moves fully online again due to COVID-19? Do we need to leave the country immediately, and what if we can't?
These are all such good and thoughtful questions. So since online classes are allowable now based on the SEVP guidance, travel is a personal choice and is not currently required, even if classes are online. So it's really up to you. Also, I'd like to mention that I'm the one that's been sending you all those emails and the links to surveys that Beth mentioned. I sent the most recent one last night, so please do follow up with us and complete those surveys. And thank you for joining us today.
Great. So we're going to move on to the next topic, which is finance questions. And the first one about finance goes to Beth. Will SUNY New Paltz be providing any form of financial assistance to international students financially impacted by COVID-19? For example, scholarships, aid, on-campus employment, or others?
Thank you. And I want to acknowledge that this has been a very challenging semester and last few months for all of our international students. It's something that we recognize and that we're very concerned about and are doing everything that we can to help you to be successful in your classes, which includes not only academic success, but making sure that you're not overly burdened by the financial worries that you may be facing personally or with your family abroad, and something that we're spending a lot of time considering. So regarding graduate assistant and teaching assistant positions, yes, those are continued. The university early on made a commitment to continue GAs and both TAs and GAs for students. And it is clear that students who are physically in the United States who have a TA or a GA can take those positions, and I know a few positions are still open, so we may be able to, there may be new positions that would be available. You should look for guidance as to whether students who are outside the United States are eligible for this. More information about this will be available in the future. It's not yet certain whether students who are not in the country can legally accept a GA or a TA appointment, but we hope to have more information soon. Regarding scholarships, the New Paltz Foundation scholarships have been awarded to international students. There are some that are specifically designated as for international students, thanks to the support of our generous donors. There are others that are open to any student, or perhaps students in a particular major or particular academic focus. Those have been awarded, and I know that many of you have received those. Congratulations, and we look and expect that those would continue to be available in the future as well. So continue to look for information about those scholarships. I also recognize that on-campus employment has been very, very limited. If you worked in Hasbrook in the spring semester, you were furloughed or no longer working as soon as spring break was over. In the summer, it's been even more limited, as I'm sure you know. We expect that there will be more jobs available in the fall, but probably not as many as there have been in the past. So if you're interested in on-campus employment, I would suggest that you apply now. If you're planning to be physically on campus this fall and are looking for an on-campus job. Career Resource Center is also very active, and they're continuing to provide services to any student, any New Paltz student who needs assistance in finding positions in accepting lawful employment, which for most international students would be on-campus employment.
Thank you, Beth. Cindy, what should a student do if they still have not received their refund for the spring 2020 semester?
You can contact our office at international@newpaltz.edu, and one of our colleagues will get back to you. This is being done on an individual basis, and it involves various billing adjustments. So if you have questions about your specific billing adjustment, we'll have to answer those on an individual basis. So email us, and one of our colleagues will get back to you.
Great. And for Beth, will fall 2020 costs be reduced to reflect changes in campus services due to COVID-19? For example, tuition, athletic fees, activity fees, etc.
Okay, so tuition for the coming academic year, that would be fall 2020 and spring 2021, have not yet been published. That's a decision made not here on this campus, but by the New York State Legislature. Typically, we have that information in July, so we are looking for it, and we expect to have final costs soon. You know, check back to see when it's been updated, and we'll let you know once we get information about tuition fees, etc., as soon as that's available. I'm sorry that it's not yet.
Follow up to that, will online classes be cheaper than face-to-face classes?
So no, but first let me clarify that we are responding to questions from current international students who are continuing their studies, whether they're in the US and are online or in their home country and are online. I just want to mention, in case any of you are newly admitted students who are not in the country, there will be a separate session for you at a future date. So look for that information. But no, at this time, tuition for online courses is not reduced for continuing students. It will be the same, whether it's face-to-face, hybrid, online courses, or a mix.
Thank you. This next question is for Kathy. Can a student or anyone get tested in their home country instead if it's cheaper where they are? Will COVID-19 testing be covered by their international student health insurance?
Sorry. Yes, students can be tested in their home country before they come, but all students, international students who have been outside the country before July 31st, 2020 will need to be tested when they arrive in the US as well. The good news is that the insurance that we provide will cover the testing. So it will not cost you any money to get the test here in the US when you arrive. On-campus students will be tested upon arrival and be required to quarantine for 14 days regardless of the results of the test. And off-campus students similarly will be required to be tested but will quarantine in their off-campus housing. But the test will be covered and free.
Thank you. So we're moving on to the next topic related to reentry. This first question is for Cindy. If an international student returns home before the start of fall semester, will they be able to return to the United States when classes start?
I would recommend that you check travel restrictions and potential quarantine requirements. Please remember that when you're traveling from abroad into the US, you always need a passport that's valid at least 6 months into the future upon your return date or entry date to the US. You also will need your valid F1 visa stamp in your passport and a travel signature that's valid on your I-20. Amanda's going to put a link in the chat where you can actually request your travel signature from our website. This is one of the services that you can request virtually through our website, and we're able to process it and get those documents to you as you need them.
Next one here is for Jennie. If you are an OPT student and have left the country, can they re-enter the United States? Does this depend on their employment status?
So very similar to Cindy's, need a valid passport, a valid visa, your I-20 signed. We do recommend that students have confirmation of employment via a letter or an email. And additionally, they should be checking travel restrictions and quarantine requirements for the state that you are currently living in.
Cindy, will international students have to quarantine for 2 weeks if they are returning to the US from abroad? And will on-campus students be charged extra for these 2 weeks?
Okay, so to answer the first question, yes, all students returning from abroad are required to quarantine for 2 weeks. To meet this requirement, students living on campus should arrive by August 5th. On-campus students will not be charged for the required 2 weeks of on-campus quarantine housing. So that's the second part to that question. You won't be charged if you've been approved to live on campus and you're coming early for the mandatory 2 weeks quarantine period. you won't be charged for the additional housing time. We're also working with campus services on providing food to you during the quarantine period. You'll be able to order it online, and it will be delivered to the quarantine hall. The approximate cost for 3 meals per day through this on-campus service will be $25 per day if you choose to use the service. And we'll share more information about this with on-campus students soon. For off-campus students, you should return to the New Paltz area by August 10th to self-quarantine for 2 weeks in your off-campus residence prior to the start of classes.
Thanks, Cindy. So we have a few questions here for Jennie. First one is, what should I do if I already booked a flight for a later arrival date or cannot arrive by August 5th?
So if you've been approved to live on campus for the fall semester, you must arrive by August 5th in order to meet the quarantine requirements set by the campus.
Can I start classes late?
So you should definitely communicate directly with your instructors in this case in regards to any missed classes, whether it's at the start of the semester, the middle of the semester, a conversation to be had with your individual instructors.
And can I self-quarantine with family instead?
So again, if you've been approved to live on campus for the fall semester, you must arrive on campus and report to the residence hall by August 5th and quarantine on campus. For off-campus students, it depends on the location of your family member and the current New York State requirements.
And this next one is for Kathy. Is there any guidance or restrictions for travel within the United States?
Yes, and this is guidance that's also changing on a daily basis. The governor of New York has recently determined that anyone who's traveling to New York from within the United States, but coming from a state that's more highly affected by COVID at this point, must quarantine for 14 days as well, and also complete a form, a mandatory form for the state of New York, or risk getting a $2,000 fine. So the list of affected states changes on a daily basis. So if you're traveling within the US, you should check the link that was just posted to see if the state that you're currently visiting or visited before the start of the semester is on the list. And if so, fill out the form and then quarantine for 14 days after arriving back from that state.
Cindy, will on-campus students have to share a room with other students?
During the quarantine period, you would not share a room. They're individual single rooms with single bathrooms. For the rest of the semester, though, when you're moved to your permanent housing on campus, you will have one roommate, but the residence hall capacity on all the campus will be reduced to 2,900 students. In the double occupancy rooms. So that means there's no triples. There won't be any more than 2 people per room. International students are among the groups of students who will be prioritized for campus housing, along with those in programs with heavy lab, studio, equipment intensive, and clinical components. Additionally, residential international students will be allowed to remain in the residence halls until the completion of the semester, even if all classes move to an online or remote format.
Thank you. The next question is, do international students need to obtain a new I-20 because of the new SEVP guidance?
Happily, no. As of July 14th, the July 6th guidance is no longer valid. And you can refer to the email that I just sent last night, which was the evening of July 15th, sorry. So I sent it last night, which was July 15th. But no, we don't need to reissue all of your I-20s by August 4th, thankfully for you and thankfully for us.
Absolutely, it's good news. Another one for you, Cindy, that says, if I leave the US for more than 5 months, do I need to get a new visa?
No, you shouldn't have to. If the visa, the F1 visa stamp in your passport is still valid, you do not need a new visa at this time. But if this question is related more towards your I-20 or your F1 status, it really depends on whether you have taken a leave of absence or have remained enrolled and active. So please be sure to follow up with an international student advisor about your specific case so that we can look at your record and give you more detailed information.
Thank you. We're moving on to the next topic now related to OPT. So these questions are all for you, Jennie. First one being, what is the current status of OPT in the United States, and have there been any changes?
So there haven't been any significant changes in terms of applying for OPT, which I think really pertains to the students in this session. The important thing to remember is that you must be in the United States to apply for OPT.
And what is the future of OPT in the United States?
So I wish I had a crystal ball, but I don't. So we can really only comment on what the regulations are today and what the guidance is today. We will continue to host OPT and CPT workshops this fall virtually, and we will continue to help students with their OPT and CPT applications.
That's great. So this last question about OPT says, I want to apply for OPT, but I also want to continue my studies online from abroad in my final semester. Is this a problem for my F1 status?
So again, to apply for OPT, you must be in the United States. So if you're abroad, then you need to return to the United States before the end of the semester in order to be eligible to apply for OPT. However, you'll need to keep in mind, just like as we mentioned earlier, you need to keep in mind travel restrictions that are in place. So you'll need to make plans accordingly. If there's any changes to the F1 policy or / guidance, we'll be sure to share that information with all students.
Thank you so much, Jennie. The next topic is related to support in the non-financial sense. And the first one is for Cindy. How will SUNY New Paltz support international students in completing their degree programs if they are unable to return to the United States this fall? And what campus services will be available for the fall semester?
So the university faculty, staff, and the administration continue to provide our usual support services to students. We've only adopted new ways or adapted how we provide these services to meet the current circumstances. And I'm going to reference two valuable resources on this topic specifically. They're on the New Paltz Forward website. On this website, you'll find a fall 2020 campus reopening plan and the fall reopening FAQs. So the first, the reopening plan, is a comprehensive and detailed document that contains 81 pages of helpful information. You can review the table of contents on pages 4 through 9 to easily identify which sections and topics you would like to read about. In this plan, you'll find helpful information about academic and student life programming and services. Also on the New Paltz Forward website, you will find frequently asked questions, or FAQs. These FAQs include concise responses to questions about academics and instruction, residence life, campus life, health and hygiene, campus programs and spaces, human resources, diversity and inclusion, among other relevant topics. And as I mentioned before, you can also go to our International Student Programs website to make requests and to schedule virtual advising appointments with our office.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Cindy, for that. This next question is for Beth. What other support will SUNY New Paltz or international student programs be providing international students at this time?
So as Cindy mentioned, the International Students Programs is going to continue to provide the support that's been in place since we moved remote all the way back in March. If you recall, we were in the office through spring break, and then we have been working remotely since that time. And even though we're not meeting with international students face-to-face, we're coming into the office, we're working from home every day. The designated school officials, or DSOs, we continue to respond to your emails. We make one-on-one appointments with students. We update the website. Then we update the website again when the rule changes. And then when the rule changes again, we update the website again. As you know, Cindy and others send you lots of emails. We're issuing I-20s. We're signing them for travel. We're processing applications for OPT. We'll have webinars, as Jennie mentioned. We have hosted other events like this one, most recently with New Paltz President Donald Christian. We'll be doing another one soon, specifically for newly admitted students. Other events are going to take place during the semester, some of them like this, hopefully some of them also in person when we can do that safely. The same for orientation, mostly that will be online, but probably there will be some in-person elements as if we can do so safely. But if there's a support service or if there's a need that you have that we are not providing, please let us know. If you have we've never done this before. Before March, many of us did not use Zoom regularly to communicate with students. Before March, we liked having you come into our office and sit with us and talk with us. And this was a big change for us. But if you have suggestions for ways that we can better provide service to you, please let us know. And we want to make sure that we are able to provide that kind of support that you need.
Thank you, Beth. Let's see. What should an international student do if they experience bias or prejudice against them based on their language, country, or origin? Beth?
Yeah, well, certainly we hope that that is not happening in any format, but we want to acknowledge that it does happen, even in a place like New Paltz. Just yesterday, I participated in a discussion that included faculty, administrators, and students, and the topic was race and racism on campus. It wasn't an easy discussion, but it was very open, and it reaffirmed for me that New Paltz is committed as a whole community to welcoming students of all backgrounds, all countries, all races, languages, ideologies. Everyone participating in the discussion was encouraged to share an experience or a complaint or a suggestion. And the role of President Christian and other campus leaders was primarily to listen. So we want to listen to you, first of all. We want to hear from any student who has experienced bias or prejudice against them for any reason. If you've had a similar experience, I hope that you'll feel comfortable sharing it with one of the international student advisors. You could share it with me or with a trusted faculty member on campus. It might also be helpful to speak to a counselor, but you may want to do more than that. You may want to take some action, or you may want the university to take some action on your behalf, and that may be appropriate. There is a comprehensive judicial process on campus. It continues online, even though most of us are not on the campus. It's led by the Dean of Students, and it assures a fair hearing for anyone with a complaint. I'm also going to ask Amanda to put into the chat the Student Bill of Rights. There's a link to it there. And among other things, it guarantees the right to be treated with dignity and to receive from the institution courteous, fair, and respectful services. We're prepared to support you by fostering a community that reflects the values of diversity. And I'd just like to highlight a quote from the letter that President Christian provided just last Friday. This was from the email that I hope all of you received. And he said this: to each of our international students, we say directly, you belong here. We stand with you and with all our international faculty and staff during this stressful time. I hope you feel that. I hope that our actions reflect this sentiment, and we hope that you will let us know when we are not living up to our ideals.
Thank you, Beth. So that is the end portion of the questions that were submitted to us in advance. So we're going to now open it up to you to ask questions in the Q&A section here in Zoom, and we have a number of them here already. So I'm going to start out some of these. I'll ask them to the panel, and any of you can jump in to answer these, okay? Some of these we have answered already, but I know that there are students who came in a little bit late and may have missed the answer to these. And since we do still have some time, I think we'll ask them anyway. So this first one is asking, when will the model of instruction for the class schedule of fall 2020 be finalized? Since they need to change their schedule for fall semester as they won't be able to attend the college in person.
Hi. I just heard back from our registrar who confirmed that ITS is currently working on updating the schedule of classes to include the mode of instruction today. As long as there are no technical issues that continue to need to be worked out, it should be posted today. That's the latest.
Great. And that would include, I'm guessing, MS Computer Science or Electrical Engineering courses as well?
I believe that it's for all courses.
Great. There were a couple other questions about that, so I wanted to make sure they knew that was the answer to their question as well. Another question here, as we did last semester, all students will face different types of difficulties. What would be a possible support from the school? For example, will there be a pass-fail option again?
I can respond to that. At this point, I don't expect that there will be a pass-fail option, but then I'll have to say I didn't expect a pass-fail option in spring 2020 either. But if you recall, the courses were continuing as usual until spring break. We fully expected that the rest of the semester would be online. Many of the faculty and students who switched from the seated, of course, everyone moved from seated to online instruction. Many of the faculty had never taught online courses before. The students were not expecting to have online courses. The plan was that it would continue to be seated. And so in this extraordinary move of the campus to go completely remote, allowances were made. I know that many faculty members, including my husband, who's a history professor, has spent the summer in webinars and reading and redesigning his class so that he's able to do, I think he can do now either hybrid, face-to-face or online. There's a lot of support for faculty and there's support for students now to be successful in online. So I do not expect a change to pass-fail in the fall semester.
Thank you. This next question, I think is more for new students than current students, but maybe we can answer this anyway for this one who's asking, what happens for international students whose embassies are still not opened and time is ticking?
I can answer that. So there's a couple of different options. You might be interested in starting your program online and taking a class or two, or maybe even a full load this fall. If you're unable to secure a visa in time to arrive for the fall semester. Additionally, you might want to consider deferring your admission to the spring semester. So you can certainly reach out to international@newpaltz.edu. And let us know what you'd like to do. And then we can refer you to the correct person department to make sure that we can help you secure those plans.
Great. Another question is regarding the August 5th arrival. Students saying they understand they have to arrive by this date, but what if they have no other options? What should they do if they are unable to come August 5th? And I know this may have been answered already, but for those who may have missed it.
So the August 5th arrival date is required for students who live on campus. We also have an airport pickup. I know Amanda shared our airport pickup link in the chat, and I encourage any of you to take advantage of that. We've opened it up to new, continuing on-campus and off-campus students who might like us to pick you up at the airport, JFK. And the reason it's on August 5th is because that's the last day that students who have been approved to live on campus can check into the residence halls in order to meet the mandatory 2-week quarantine requirement. So unfortunately, we're not able to check you in on a later date if you're living on campus.
But to clarify, for students living off campus, they would have an option to arrive later. Is that right?
Yes, so for off-campus students, we would still recommend that you arrive early enough to do the 2-week quarantine, depending on what your courses look like, whether they're all online, maybe you can arrive later. But if you have any classes that will meet in person on campus, you'll have to quarantine in your off-campus residence. You'll self-quarantine for 2 weeks before you can come to campus. So that date would be August 10th, which would allow for at least 2 weeks before the start of any classes on campus.
Thanks, Cindy. Another student is, again, talking about airport pickup, and she's stating that there's only one flight available that arrives August 4th from her country, so she can't take the bus from the airport. So what time can she arrive to campus on August 5th if she's arriving on her own?
We're in touch with you, and it's nice that you're here. I'm happy that you're here. We are looking into that. We have to check with the residence hall staff to find out what times. There'll be a time frame that individuals who are arriving on their own can check in on August 5th, and we'll be able to update you with that time frame once we've coordinated more with Residence Life.
Great. Again, this was likely answered already, but if a student is in the United States currently, would there still be a need to quarantine on campus beginning of August?
I'll respond to that because I just noticed in the Daily Digest that there's an update to the quarantine policy today. It's quite lengthy, so I won't read it here, but I hope that all of you are getting the Daily Digest. If you're not, you can sign up for it through my new Paltz, I believe, and or you can look on the new Paltz website. And again, it's several paragraphs, so I would encourage you to read that. There's information about new students quarantining, travel within the United States, etc. So please check that for more detailed information.
Great. Another concern is regarding many flights from different countries have not resumed to fly to the United States. What would be students' options in that case? Specifically, this is referring to a student from India who do not have flights available to come to the US at this time.
So I can offer to answer that question. I think it goes back to, again, the type of classes that you'll be taking. As we mentioned earlier, if you're going to be arriving late and don't have enough time to self-quarantine before the start of the semester and are likely to miss a couple of days at the very beginning of the semester if you're taking seated classes, then that's a conversation that you need to have with your faculty, and let them know that unfortunately due to flights, and really give them the details that are for your particular situation. If you're taking full online classes, if you're arriving the first week in September or the first week in October, it shouldn't have any impact on your class schedule.
Great. Let's see. And another question that was answered, if it's going to be online for the fall semester, are there any deductions in tuition fee for international students since we won't be experiencing on-campus facilities?
Yeah, so I'll respond to that as well. At this point, tuition has not been published for the fall semester. Fees and the like are also not yet available. We will give you that information as soon as we have information about the full tuition and fees. If you've already registered, I'm guessing that most continuing students registered back in the spring for the during the advanced registration period. At this point, your bill for the fall is not yet active and it's not due. mostly because we don't know what the tuition is going to be. So continue to update that, look at the emails, and check my new Paltz for more information.
Okay. If classes are going to be online, can we study the fall semester in their home country and return for spring semester? Will this affect our visa status in any way?
According to the latest guidance from STVP, this would not have a negative impact on your F1 status. Again, this was the latest change in a number of changes since March. And actually the current STVP policy guidance has reverted back to their March guidance, which does allow for online classes and for you to remain active in your status, your F1 status, whether you're in the US or abroad. And we'll continue to keep you updated on any policy changes or adjustments moving forward. We're keeping an eye on all of that and continuing to advocate for you. So, but to answer the question, as of today, it's okay.
As a follow-up to that, none of us have a really crystal ball, as Jenny said before, but is there any chance again that STVP or ICE may change rules again from the government to take offline classes to maintain F1 status?
I don't know, but I have to say that the support for international students following the July 6th guidance, it wasn't even regulation, and that was overwhelming. It was bipartisan, it was all across the country, it was many, many universities, it was many people within New Paltz. It was a very strong message to the current federal administration that this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to change the rules so late in the program. I mean, classes were starting at some universities start early in August. Some students were very much in limbo. It was a very strong message from the academic community and really from the entire country that international students are welcome here and that they bring value to our country. And I think it's very unlikely, given that strong message, that the federal administration will make another change like that. Again, I was very proud to be part of the New York Attorney General's lawsuit. I was very proud to see so many lawsuits across the country and so many faculty members on our own campus writing in support of you, our international students. At one point we thought that every international student was going to have to register for a face-to-face course. That was the guidance that we understood back on July 6th, only 10 days ago. I had faculty members writing to me and offering to teach courses for you that would be face-to-face and that they would do for no compensation. I had faculty members creating courses on things like democracy in the United States for international students to learn that would be face-to-face, maybe taught out on the soccer field. And it was really heartening. So no, I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know if that happens again, if that's a change again, there will once again be a very strong, there will be many voices across the country. Our voices will be among those, and we will support you and say that this cannot be done.
Thank you, Beth, for that. There have been a number of questions regarding leave of absence for current students. If someone could speak to that in detail regarding the process, how to apply for that, and if there are any costs to it, and any effects on their F1 visa status.
So I'll go ahead and address that. And I think, unfortunately, the simple answer is it depends. And I don't know, and kind of. It really isn't, it's an individual case-by-case basis. Absence, you can take a leave of absence from the university, if you're an undergraduate matriculated student or a graduate matriculated student. But there are things to take in mind or keep in consideration when taking a leave of absence and how that might affect your immigration status. I often tell students that your F1 status and your academic program should run parallel, side by side. They should be doing the same exact thing. You're registered full-time, then you are registered active in Sivas. But sometimes things happen in life and we need to take a break in our academic life, or we need to take a break in our immigration status. And so they may not run parallel, they may not match. In which case, what I really recommend is if you're thinking about taking a leave of absence from the university, or you need to take an immigration leave of absence for one reason or another, contact us directly. You can email us at international@newpaltz.edu, and one of the international student advisors will get back to you. We'll look at your record and we'll make recommendations based on where you are in your program and let you know how that decision might impact you in the long run.
Thank you. There was also mention of deferral. There may be a few new students watching today asking how long is that possibility there for students? How long can they wait to decide to defer, as many are waiting to find out if consulates are going to open in time?
So I can answer that question as well. We offer a lot of flexibility within the deferral process, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. I would say you can definitely take your time in deciding before the start of the semester. But if it doesn't seem likely by mid-August that you're going to be able to arrive for the start of the semester, you can certainly reach out to us at that point, and we can start the deferral process. The longer you wait, it means the only impact is it's the longer it'll take to issue your spring I-20. So I encourage you mid to late August, no later than shortly after the start of the semester would be appropriate in terms of timing.
Thank you. And somewhat related to this, is there anything that SUNY New Paltz or other schools can do to convince or advocate for embassies in other countries to be opening up, scheduling visa interviews for students?
I mean, I know that not only individually as New Paltz, but also the SUNY system, the State University of New York system. And then we're also members of an organization called NAPSA, the Association of International Educators. All of these are ways that we advocate for you. You know, we're regularly writing to our local representatives, to the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State, both individually and collectively across the United States. I do know that there have been some consulates beginning to open. It's something that you'd have to check on the State Department website. And certainly we will continue to advocate that, but only as it's safe. I know that each individual country and even city is experiencing a different level of active cases of COVID-19, as it is in the United States. Each place is different. And since it is required that international students go in person to apply for entry visas, you know, that's a major concern. So yes, we hear your concerns. We are speaking on your behalf, but it's really going to be consulate by consulate. I think it's unlikely that the entire State Department will just open all of the consulates at one time.
Thanks, Beth. If I take all courses online, can I go back to my country midway in the semester and return for spring semester?
You should be able to do that as long as, you know, again, depending on the time that you're planning to travel, as everything is subject to change and this is a fluid situation with COVID still, you should be able to do that because you're taking online classes. You would just need to, I would recommend you check in with us, the International Student Office, and we can help advise you on anything you might need for your immigration record. And additionally, any travel restrictions at the time of your travel.
Thank you. Going back to OPT, Jennie, this is something you answered already, but for someone who joined us a little bit later, will a student lose their OPT chance if they study online for fall semester from their home country?
So as I had mentioned previously, the regulations or the guidance for students applying for really changed. In addition to meeting all of the requirements to be eligible for OPT, the thing I think that maybe is most pressing for this particular situation is that students do need to be inside the United States in order to apply for that benefit. So if you're taking your from abroad, and you do want to apply for OPT, then you need to keep in mind that you'll need to be able to, you must return to the United States before the end of the semester so that you have sufficient time to submit your OPT application. So what I would recommend, as we've been recommending throughout the session, is that you can email us at international@newpaltz.edu. I will most likely get that email, and then you and I can communicate directly about travel plans, the process, and all of those things.
Thank you. Here's one question maybe one of you can clarify, asking if a student is out of the United States specifically for more than 5 months, are they able to do that as an F1 student?
With the current SEVP guidance, it is allowable. I think what the concern that this question is related to is normally when students are outside of the US for more than 5 months, they, on a leave of absence, they would need a new initial I-20 in order to re-enter. There's a little bit, when students take a leave of absence, and we are required to terminate your record for authorized early withdrawal. If you re-enter the US or plan to re-enter the US within 5 months, then we usually are able to request a reactivation to your current Sivas F1 record. However, if you're outside of the US for more than 5 months on that terminated record, then after 5 months, we're not able to request that it's reactivated. So therefore, we would have to issue you a new I-20, and when you re-enter the US on that I-20, your F1 status kind of starts over. So therefore, you would not be maintaining the same F1 status and accruing eligibility towards CPT or OPT, for example. However, under this guidance, if you're not taking a leave of absence and you're continuing your studies online or in person or hybrid, whether you're here in the US or you're abroad taking them online, we are not required to terminate your records under this current guidance that just came out. You could, because your record would be active, you should be able to re-enter in active status without it negatively impacting your status. I hope that answers your question. I think I understand the background of it and the concern, but under the current guidance, it should be okay to be outside of the country as long as your record remains active and you're enrolled full-time.
Thank you, Cindy. That was actually very informative for me as well. So thank you for sharing all of that. This question is regarding online courses and textbooks. The concern is whether all textbooks are published online or not, and how will students be able to access materials needed for their online courses?
I can answer that, or at least try to, because it really does depend on the course and the availability of the textbooks. I know more and more books are available online, but if you can't get it in your home country or have it shipped, which might be quite costly to try and order from Amazon or something and have it shipped, I would just suggest reaching out to your professor and seeing if there's some way that they can work with you to provide the materials or alternative materials if you've exhausted all your options for trying to get that textbooks. So, and I would do that early on so they realize that you don't have the required materials. And also start looking early, because if it is something you need to have mailed to you, it might take some time. So as soon as you look what the course requirements are and the textbook requirements, see if you can get it, and if not, ask your faculty as quickly as possible what some alternative solutions might be.
Great, thank you, Kathy. And speaking of books, can anyone share whether or not the library is open right now?
That is one of the resources on the FAQ. I could try to share my screen. Let's see. Here's all the questions we were answering. So under the fall reopening plan, there is a section specifically about the Sojourner Truth library. So I would recommend that you go to this plan that's available online, and then you go through the table of contents here to find that topic, and then you can find the answer within this document. It is likely also on the shorter FAQs that are located on this same website under frequently asked questions.
Thank you. I just shared the link again in case frequently asked questions that are on the website. Okay. Someone said thank you for all of your help for everybody here. But there's still a few more questions and we still have time left. Another one regarding OPT, a student read if they can't have OPT if they're not a full-time student for the last 2 semesters. What if they're not a full-time student for the last semester? Can they also not do CPT? And will they be able to still stay on OPT? I'm sorry if I hope I got that question right. There's a lot going on, so just want to make sure.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's a very specific question, obviously, to that particular student. And I would be happy to talk to that student directly to be able to answer those. As Cindy mentioned just a couple of questions ago, students are still required to be full-time. The regulations in that capacity have not changed. I will be Sivas registering students for the fall semester, be checking full-time enrollment, making sure that you've processed your fall bills. If you're under-enrolled, you'll receive an email from me confirming or asking you to confirm that it's your final semester, because hopefully, as you know, the reasons for being less than full-time are very limited, and typically the most common is in your final semester. So if a student is in their final semester, they may enroll part-time. They could be eligible for CPT if that's something that is available within your program of study. And it would not have an impact on your ability to apply for OPT benefits. So I hope that answered that question. But again, if it didn't, email us at international@newpaltz.edu.
Thanks, Jenny. One question about campus housing. We stated that campus housing will be prioritized for international students. So how do we as international students register for or get access to this campus housing? And I might tack on, if we can clarify who that housing is for in terms of undergrad versus graduate students.
Sure. Good question. And there is probably a need to clarify this. So thank you for asking. On-campus housing is available to undergraduate students and students in our ESL program, as well as exchange and visiting students. But off-campus housing is available for graduate students. So on-campus housing is not available for graduate students. If you're an undergraduate student, then you make that request through the Residence Life office. The process changes is different whether you're a new student coming in as opposed to a continuing student. Jennie, are you able to speak a little bit more to the difference in those processes?
Sure. So for new students, we at the Center for International Programs and International Student Programs specifically work with new students to collect information and requests for on-campus housing. So if you're a new student and you haven't made those arrangements and need to make those arrangements, then you can certainly reach out to us and we'll facilitate that request. If you are a continuing student, typically advanced room sign up happens at the end of the previous semester. So typically late April, advanced room sign up, you start to get notifications within the residence halls as well as in your emails. And it's actually a process that I believe happens through my notes. So if you did not request housing and you still want to live on campus, then I would encourage you to reach out to the Office of Residence Life. And that would be my best suggestion.
Thank you. Could someone speak again regarding campus jobs and what would be the process to apply for a campus job?
I'll start with that, and anybody else can jump in if they know more than I do. Welcome to hear that. So if you had a campus job in the spring semester or previously, I think that's probably the best place to start because you've already had that experience, you're already trained. And so I would first of all go back to an employer and previously to let them know where you are physically, that you're still interested in working. I know in our office, we've continued to employ some students this summer. That's been online. They haven't come into our office. We've been emailing projects to them and they have been doing work for us. And I know that other offices are doing that as well. So that's the first step. If you've already had a job, get back in touch with your employer, tell them that you're interested and available to work. Possibly starting this summer, but hopefully more positions will be available in the fall. There is information on the website and also at Career Resources about on-campus positions, so you can explore those too. If you've never had a job before and need to apply for a Social Security number, I know that there's a process for doing that as well. You would have to be physically in the United States to apply for a Social Security number if you've never done that before. And again, we can provide you with a letter what the position or the process is to get the job first, and then contact us for information so that we can help you to apply for a Social Security number. You have to go in person to the Social Security office, and then the card would be sent to you by mail. I mentioned GAs and TAs in the past. Those positions will continue to be available, and so if you contact your academic department or look at the other list that we have available too. I do appreciate that it's tough. There are not as many positions this summer. There will not be as many positions in the fall, so you're certainly going to have to work harder to be able to find those. I understand that, and I appreciate that that's a challenge because many of our international students do work very hard. You're full-time students and you're working 20 hours a week, and that's not easy, and I applaud you. But I would just take those steps to see if you could find positions that are available.
Related to that, could you also clarify the guidance and restrictions as it pertains to international students' ability to work in the United States? One student's asking whether there would be any flexibility during this time for working off campus.
We have not seen any guidance about that at this point. It is important to know that international students can only work with authorization. On-campus employment is permitted both in campus offices, but also in affiliated organizations like Sodexo, the food service. It's not technically the State University of New York, but it's physically on our campus, and students can accept those kinds of positions as well. Can you work at a local restaurant in New Paltz? No. Can you work anywhere off campus without very specific authorization? No, that guidance hasn't changed. I haven't seen any indication that that might change. If it does, certainly we'll let you know. Both Jennie and Cindy have talked about OPT, optional practical training, and CPT, curricular practical training. That hasn't changed. Those options are available for both paid and unpaid OPT and CPT, and we expect that that will continue.
Thanks, Beth. Another question regarding housing. Is there any possible way to have an allotted room on campus in the middle of the fall semester in case a student wishes to return to New Paltz? I'm guessing if they start the semester not at New Paltz.
I can try to answer this question. So I would say a couple of different things. As Cindy mentioned, international students are being given priority, but we're also being thoughtful and about how those rooms are being allotted. We have a number of students who are likely to need housing. And housing is paid for the whole entire semester. So if you have requested a room, the payment will be for the full semester. And you would be required to quarantine prior to arriving. So there's a lot of different pieces in that, that specific question. So I think I'm answering with an I don't know, and that there are probably lots of other questions that need to be answered that were specifically asked. So I would say it would be a question for the Office of Residence Life to ultimately decide whether that would be an option and what the limitations they have during the semester to allow students to arrive and complete a mandatory quarantine while obviously providing housing options and safety for the rest of the students living in the community.
Thank you so much, Jennie. Another question about online course study. Will time zone differences be an issue if students study online from their home country?
I can try and address that question. And it really, again, varies or will vary depending on the type of course that you're taking. Some online courses will be synchronous, meaning that everyone will meet together at the same time. But the majority will be asynchronous, meaning you do the work when it suits your schedule. I'm fairly sure in the schedule of classes, it's saying whether the course is going to be synchronous or asynchronous so that you can choose courses appropriately so that the time difference will not be a factor. But only courses marked synchronous would require that students log on and participate in the class at the time of the professor's choosing, which could be difficult for students in different time zones. But I would think that more classes will be offered asynchronously, meaning you can complete the work when it works for your schedule.
Great. So we have one more question here in the Q&A. We still have time if others think of questions before we end today. But this question says, I just received a mail from the Japanese Consulate General, and it says that the announcement of canceling the new regulation that international students must leave when classes online is still active, and President Trump did not cancel it officially so far. I would like CIP and the school to double check the regulation is canceled.
Okay, thank you. I can try to answer that as well, and if anyone else would like to also speak to this. I'd like to reassure you that the STVP policy guidance, which is ICE, which is under the Department of Homeland Security, which is under the executive branch, which is the federal administration of the US, has officially rescinded their July 6th policy. And they officially stated that we should refer back to their March policy guidance, which does allow for online classes, full-time load, whether in the US or abroad. And having said that, I also understand the concern, and I think I spoke to this a little bit before, but I do want to make it clear that we are giving you the most up-to-date information that we also have. And if anything changes again, then we will work to support you again, just as we have throughout these other policy changes since March. I mentioned that you're receiving a lot of emails from me. It's true. Although my name is on the email, a lot of coordination and dedication and work with my colleagues and our team at the Center for International Programs has gone into our message to you and our response to all of the policy changes. And I am confident that we will continue to do that because we know it best supports you and our university, and really the work that we believe in and that we do with utmost integrity. So.
Thank you very much, Cindy, for clarifying that. So at this time, we don't have any more questions coming up. Would any of you as the panelists, do you have any final words that you'd like to give to the students watching?
I would just like to thank you for joining us. For us this morning, for those of you who are in other time zones, it might be quite late at night. And I really appreciate the chance that you've given us to address you now, and I appreciate your questions, both those that were submitted previously and before. And you know, things will change. We will continue to get more information. We'll share that with you. We'll let you know how things are happening, but it's also valuable for us to hear from you, to hear what your concerns and your questions are. So don't hesitate to reach out by email or make an appointment with one of the advisors. We're sharing this within the campus. We're also sharing it across the country. So we want to hear from you and know what your concerns are and how we can best serve you. Thank you again. I'm really pleased that some of you are going to be on campus this fall, even though we'll be seeing you from a distance wearing a mask and probably just waving across the quad. We do look forward to seeing you on campus. We certainly look forward to the opportunity to have you back in our offices, participating in our events, and communicating with each other more closely. But until then, thank you for joining us in this way, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Great. Thank you to all of you, our panelists, and everything that you do for our students. If any of you watching, if you still have a question that you feel was not addressed in this event, as Beth said, please be sure to reach out to the International Student Programs Office and schedule a virtual one-on-one advising appointment with one of our advisors. I shared the link to do that in the chat box here as well. If there are any students watching who are new students who have not yet come to New Paltz and who have been newly admitted, we're going to have a separate virtual Q&A just like this one for all of our newly admitted students. Or, you know, if you are a current student, share this with others that you know of that are new and coming to campus or coming to study with New Paltz soon. So thank you to everyone who joined us today. This event has been recorded and it will soon be on our SUNY New Paltz International Programs YouTube channel playlist. It also was live streamed on our Facebook page for International Student Programs. So you can see it there, share it, and we'll also email it to everybody as well. So please stay well, stay safe. We really hope to see you again soon as we're all able to. We miss all of you, our students. We hope you have a good rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are. Thanks, everybody.